Thanks a lot, Nick, for agreeing to have this conversation and to share your experience you've had in the analytics industry for the past 8 to 10 years. And I think a lot has changed since COVID happened. And the analytics industry, as such, I think it got a huge push due to that, as digitization was it accelerated, right? And
For
the
sure.
use of digital applications exploded, and every industry kind of took the hit of how would things work if people are not being on the floor, right?
Hmm.
How do say using technology, using data, using robotics, or many of these different applications across industries to kind of solve for such situation where which is completely unforeseen, and suddenly there has been huge impact, right? And it could be retail, and retail was one of the industry which suddenly got impacted, where people suddenly started ordering everything online, like the infra was there, but due to COVID this happened, right? Education industry got impacted. And you being from you having spent considerable time in the auto insurance or in insurance industry in general, uh, how have you seen this industry leveraging analytics, or because for me it's the impression is that insurance is a very analytics heavy industry. So
Yes.
but how has this industry also embraced see this situation, and how has it evolved embracing machine learning in its workflows as of now?
Yeah, specifically how it relates to COVID and how that accelerated things or changed things, or just in general.
In general, first of all.
Yeah. Okay. So in general, like what you said is exactly right. Insurance is analytics heavy. I mean, I would say the core business model of insurance is collect information
Right.
with an eye for the future and using that information to drive your business, right? Because the very core of insurance is being able to price risk, which just
Right.
involves predicting losses, right? How risky uh, of a driver are you? And if you get in an accident, like how severe is it likely to be? How many accidents are you likely to get in? If you don't have that, I mean, you don't have an insurance business, period,
Mm.
right? So, like the very core of insurance is information gathering and prediction.
Amazing. And I had a chance to work with the auto insurance and an auto insurance problem. And uh, in that workflow, I found like there were so many different parties involved. If, say, for example, the problem was about that if kind of any kind of loss happens, say, whether it is a major damage, minor damage, or if it is a total loss. So right from the point when say a vehicle is getting damaged because of n number of reasons, then from
Mm-hmm.
there how does the customer who is involved gets the say the first some payment, some down payment, and then how is this entire claim processing going? And I believe claim processing is one of the a very critical workflows. I've been thinking about what are the different workflows, and claims processing is
Mm-hmm.
one which I have been exposed to, right? So
Yeah.
if I have to talk about, if I have to ask you about, okay, if you could just sketch out how a claims processing would look like, and what are the different touch points, and which where you would be collecting some information which helps in
Yeah.
solving some problems, how would it look like if you could sketch it out?
Yeah. So I'll start with maybe how information starts getting collected at each kind of point along the line, right? So uh, the very first time when we start collecting information is we call it FNOL, first notice of loss. So you've
Yeah.
either called in, or maybe you've done the app or the website, and you've said, I've been in an accident or something has happened to my vehicle. Um, and we collect a certain amount of just basic information there. So if it's a web form, maybe you're saying, okay, this was a moving vehicle accident, or maybe it was hail damage, or
Mm.
weather related. There's a few kind of basic facts
Mm.
collected, right? And part of what we're trying to get to at that point in time is what kind of category does this loss fit into, right? Because if it's something very minor, like, a tree branch fell on my car, maybe a less experienced adjuster can handle that.
Mm.
If you got in an accident with like an 18-wheeler, we probably want like a very experienced uh, adjuster to handle that. There could be
Mm.
injuries, there could be attorney
Mm.
representation. It can get like extremely complicated.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so
Mm.
right from the beginning, we're trying to assess which path is this likely to go down.
Right.
Um, and so we'll collect a lot of different information right at the start, and then it's essentially a question of figuring out what do we owe the customer,
Mm.
right? um, and that is determined by what's actually happened on the claim, but also what coverages do you have, right? Do you have um, in a lot of states you're required to have personal injury coverage. Is that going to be relevant? What about the other vehicle, if there is one?
Right.
And then who's at fault? Like, which company is liable? There's a lot of different factors to determine basically what needs to be paid out and by whom. um,
So,
because we want to pay out exactly what we owe, but
yeah.
not any more than that, right?
Yeah.
We want to pay exactly what we owe and never less, but
Yeah.
also not any more.
This sounds pretty simple, but I believe it's a humongously complex problem to solve. For example, I'll talk about any of my personal experience with insurance has been that
Mm-hmm.
when anything goes wrong, that's a time where the customer may not be in the most healthy mindset or like mental state. If my vehicle broke down or or God forbid, if some physical injury happened, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that for that person, it's a very what do you say, harrowing experience. But at the same time, this process need to handle it. It's not that okay. It's e-commerce that where okay, I want to purchase something and I purchase and I it's driven by me. Here, something undue happens, and at that point of time, I think the service needs to be top notch. I mean, for
Yeah.
my personal experience, I've been trying to call out, and these MSRs, it's taking a lot of time in the queue, and I'm really not at that good mind state of mind where I would be talking nicely also maybe, right? At
Sure.
that point, how do you, so when you think about say this auto insurance industry, which can definitely will have the vehicle damage, it can have physical bodily damage, or it could have say property damage, maybe of laptop or if any mobile got damaged. So how do you say define when you're defining this flow? I mean, if you think from design thinking perspective, this worried customer is at the center of the problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what are some of these metrics which you're calculating, which kind of helps you understand that, okay, I think this person needs to be compensated, say, immediately. And then, because we are here, we are also looking for that whether the customer is getting the due, as you said, like, okay, we pay what we owe. Great. But is the
Right.
customer, because that's a person who has ultimately be paying the annual premiums, right? And the
Right.
person requires this experience to be top notch. So
Yeah.
yes, so how does, according to you, this measurement happens, but yes, keeping the empathy for the customer at the center?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. So um, you prioritize taking care of the customer and figuring out, what's owed to some extent happens later, right? Like, you don't immediately pay for everything, but I'll give you an example. So subrogation comes into play, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you and I get in an accident, and it's unclear who's at fault, but my car is damaged and I don't
Mm.
have a car to get to
Mm.
work, right? So what my insurance company is likely to do is to give me a rental car if I have, the coverage, but also pay for my repairs. And then if they find out later that you're at fault, they're going to take it up with your insurance company to get compensated back. And
Mm.
the reason that's done is I shouldn't have to wait 3 weeks for everybody to figure out whose fault it is to
Right.
get a car that I can drive to work, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, And if that's not done, I'm not going to be renewing my policy with that company, right? Because that would
True.
be, an awful experience. And hey, this is why I buy insurance, is so I'll
Yeah.
be taken, well, besides the fact that it's a legal requirement, I want to be taken care of when this kind of thing
Yeah.
happens.
Exactly.
Um, so yeah, there's definitely a couple perspectives, right? Like the first one is, you take care of your customer, period, and you do that kind of first, right? You make sure everybody's okay, and then you kind of need to figure out the cost side as well.
Hmm. Great, great. No, it really feels fascinating whenever we try to map out the process in a typical claims processing workflow, and which are the data points which really helps when to capture what, how much to capture. Now, if I come, say, our level down from, say, we identified a business workflow and we identified the different points where we would be capturing data. Now, how would you say design or identify machine learning problems in this business landscape? So when say the organization comes in and says that, um, okay, how can we suggest me some POCs where machine learning could help solving some real business problems here and bringing value to the customer? What would be some of your top select choices for ML workflows in an auto insurance sector?
Yeah. So when I think of specifically machine learning, or if I just back up for a second and
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
like, what decisions need to be made
exactly,
for a claim,
exactly.
right? If we think of, there's a lot, but I'll just name a few, right?
Yeah.
So, um, one is who is at fault, right? There's a number of reasons you need to figure that out. The second is what damages or losses are likely to be covered. Another big one is this fraud, right? Did this
Mm,
happen? Did this happen the way, we're hearing about it, or is this a misrepresentation?
right,
Um, and there's several more, but if I look at all of these problems, some of them are deterministic, right?
right, right.
So whether you have collision coverage on your car is deterministic. I don't need machine learning for that.
Perfect.
There's a table in a database, with your policy that says you do or do not have coverage for that.
Right.
So no machine learning model necessary.
True.
Now, co- complete opposite end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
fraud. There's nothing in the database that says
Yeah.
you did or did not commit fraud, right? You
Very
have
much.
to have analytics for that. Um,
Mm,
you can rely, to some extent on adjusters identifying, hey, this is likely to be fraud. But if you don't want to miss things, you need, a layer on top of that. That's analytics. So I would really start from the standpoint of what problems need to be solved,
right.
and then where is analytics applicable. I think it's a mistake that I've seen sometimes where people say, how can I apply machine learning to this? Which is maybe not the right
Right.
standpoint to start with.
That's right. That's right. And my background being in business analytics, business intelligence, I have done reporting almost all my life. So it really makes a lot of just hold on, give me a moment. Yeah. So yeah, so what I was saying that having done a lot of business intelligence reporting, SQL in my career, I can vouch for this that there are lots of places where simple analytics will do the job, and that
Mm-hmm.
is where my next question comes in. That what are some of the popular metrics which indicate, say, good health of, say, this business flow? So for example, in if I think about, say, e-commerce, right, profit margin for any business is a good metric to see. But then
Mm-hmm.
there are business process specific metrics, for example, claim processing rate, or like time to first, what do you say, the first down payment we give to the customer, and so on
Right.
and so forth. So, what are some of the critical metrics of the industry in general, whether it is monetary oriented or time oriented or error oriented, which you think would be useful for somebody to know who works in
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. So the first one I would mention is probably loss ratio, and it's just the
Ah,
ratio of total claim payments to premium collected.
hmm,
And this basically tells you for that period of time, did you price and underwrite effectively or not? Because if you under predicted losses for your book, your loss ratio is not going to be great. And that tells you, again, either you priced inaccurately or your pricing model was okay, but you didn't select the customer base that's
hmm.
appropriate for your pricing model, right? You let too many risky people get policies. Um, so that's the first one, right? Because
Very interesting.
eventually your company will collapse if it doesn't,
Yeah,
have
amazing.
a profitable underwriting. So that's one. And then, from a claim standpoint, if you look at cycle time, which is, from the first notice of loss through the final payment,
Yeah.
that's important partly because of costs, but also just how quickly can you take care of that customer, right? Was it, did you figure out what you need to pay and pay it quickly so they could get on with their lives, or did it drag
Mhm.
on forever,
Mm,
while your adjuster looked up, um, a new door panel, like where should we buy this? Was it a really long, arduous process?
mm.
So those are a couple. There's definitely more.
Amazing. Great. So, Nick, few things. For example, now, suppose we have got the metrics identified there. Okay, these are some of the standard metrics which will be calculated, and this needs to be reported. And there would be creators of data, there would be the data team, and there would be consumers of data, right? So, if I then now take a deeper look into the formation of a typical data team for auto insurance industry. So I would like to peep into the technology stack, the data stack, which might exist in an auto insurance insurance industry in a typical company. What would be the
Mhm.
composition of a data team look like? Like what would these roles be called out? What are the different kind of workflows? You can talk about data engineering. You can give me a sort of
Sure.
a 35,000 feet overview. Would
Yeah.
be really interesting to know.
Yeah, sure. So I would say there's a couple different like broad categories. So there's plenty of data analyst roles, and typically what I see is this person works within um, one vertical in the business. So, for
Mm,
example, uh, you might have a data analyst or two that work uh, just for the claims organization, and what they're doing is collecting metrics on cycle time and
mm,
different kind of operational efficiency metrics, and
mm,
those are kind of used to inform the decision makers
mm,
in that vertical. Um, so again, this is a generalization, but they tend to be within one specific area, and they're generating information that powers kind of
mm,
decisions. They may have repetitive reports. They may have a lot of like ad hoc work. Hey, why is this
mm,
happening? What is
mm.
behind this increase in cycle time?
Yes.
But they're generally not working on deployed software, right?
Mm.
It's business intelligence.
Got it. Got it. And I believe that many organizations show this kind of structure where, say, analysts are associated with the business verticals or like departments. Why? Because
Right.
an analyst role is a lot more closer to understanding the business and providing them sufficient metrics to, on an operational level, on a tactical level, to run that department. And that's where what I have observed is that there's a data analyst, maybe in a marketing department, finance department, maybe HR department. So, and do you see the structure that where how does this data rolls up then? So, this is department wise, but something would get rolled out from an organization's perspective, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
metrics. So, this data must be flowing in some sort of a hierarchical manner where this data, how does the just a very high level, how does the governance structure looks like of this flow of data so that in the end, the data is consumable, clean, trustable by the management?
Yeah. So what I've seen work well is let's say you have a data analyst that's dedicated to HR and it's just one person, right?
Yeah.
And they've started creating these monthly reports on, I don't know, employee attrition or something. Um, what should happen at that point is if you say, okay, this metric needs to be produced monthly forever, that should then be centralized. Once the logic is defined and you
Yeah.
know it's right, you've tested it, uh, that shouldn't just depend on that one person, right?
Yeah.
What I've seen work well is you create a centralized reporting team that then says, okay, this reporting is finalized. Here's the logic. We're going to own that
Yeah. Yeah.
now. And then that analyst who's working closely with all of the people in HR to understand their needs can start working on the next thing.
True.
Um, and if you don't do this, the problem is, let's say that analyst goes to another company or they take leave. Well, like
Yeah.
that process has probably died with them.
Mm.
Um, it's we all like to think our work transitions smoothly
Mm.
to another person. Doesn't always tend to work like that, especially if you're not very intentional about what that process is.
Mm. Got it. And in terms of workflows, if I shift my focus a bit on the data engineering team, a typical data engineering team, what would that team look like? What kind of technologies have you seen more popular in, say, solving problems in the auto insurance or in general insurance industry?
Mhm. I mean, everything is really moving toward cloud, and I mean, there's different cloud providers, and the nuances between them, I don't think are really that important,
Mm.
at a high level. Uh, but definitely, a fair amount of orchestrating cloud workflows, right?
Mm.
So that's definitely important. A lot of moving data around. Eh,
Mm.
and I would say kind of like as this transition to cloud is happening, there's still a lot of cases where you have a database, like a legacy database, like Oracle or
Mm.
something,
Mm.
still being populated.
Mm.
Um, and then you're kind of starting to make copies into the cloud environment while
Yeah.
you migrate the actual original kind of data structure into cloud.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in this weird middle ground
Yeah.
in most companies, I would say, where the migration is still happening in
Mm.
some sense.
Right. And how do you see the data lakes evolving in this? Because traditionally, data lakes have been the best option when you want to just dump your data and then figure out what do you want to do with that data. And I think being in a very data intensive industry, the auto insurance industry, the urge of keeping this data somewhere in the data lake would always be there. So my question here is that what are the different kinds of data which you have seen? Is it a lot more structured data? Is it a lot more, say, document data, which would definitely then decide what kind of data stores are most popular? So if you could give some sort of a breakup of the different kind of structured, semi-structured, unstructured data, which is
Yeah,
kind of used at.
sure. So there's plenty of, I'll just start off with there's plenty of structured data, and the solution to storing that's fairly simple. It's
Right.
table in a database of some sort. That's pretty straightforward. We've kind of known what to do with
Yeah,
that
yeah.
for.
Relational DBs. Yeah.
And then you kind of have semi-structured data, so like JSON or XML, basically like nested
Yeah.
trees. You can envision, um, and you can of course store them in raw files, and people can parse them. But one thing that's exciting about Snowflake is you can have it kind of ingest these JSON or XML files and represent it in a table structure to where people can still write SQL queries on it, um, instead of a very complex, Python or whatever other
Yeah.
language to parse it.
Yeah.
So things are kind of moving in that direction. I would still say it's worth learning how to parse those semi-structured
Very much.
data types.
Very much. And that has been pretty much uh, an important skill because in my experience also working in a startup, I that was in an agri-tech sector. We used to get a lot of data which we had to ingest from APIs, and most of the times APIs would give you JSON format, and it may have complex structure which you need to parse, process, and then kind of store as say CSVs, or convert to say Parquet, drop into say an S3 bucket or AWS,
Right.
and then run some pipelines depending upon. Now that is where the data lake you are collecting, and I also assume that there's a lot of collection on unstructured data also. I believe, for example,
Hmm.
images of damaged vehicles that must be floating a lot in this in auto insurance industry, right? So
Yeah.
uh, what are the other kind of innovative use cases currently going on, and especially with AI coming in and lot of cognitive tasks becoming possible to extract knowledge, extract feature engineering has become even easier these days. So, what are some
Hmm.
of the innovative workflows or use cases you are envisioning? What's going on in the industry, which is going to bring the next value?
Yeah, there's a lot of images, and I'd say there's, for every image, there's a whole lot more text.
Yeah,
So whether it's claim adjuster notes, or whether it's call transcripts, which are getting easier and easier to transcribe into text, there's a huge amount of information that can power kind of your different models or different kind of decision making processes. And you have to look into it. It's such a rich information source, but also very challenging, right? It's a lot easier if you can just query a table and say,
yeah,
oh, look, this indicator is populated. Um, and there's a lot of different things you can do, right? So first of all, if you have all of the, claim adjuster notes or the call transcripts, all of this
mm,
text that's describing the event that you're interested in, um, you can, fit a deep learning model and just see if it predicts the outcome that you're
right.
trying to predict, whether it's
Mm,
fraud
mm,
or
mm.
coverage issues, attorney representation, whatever it is. Um, that's always something that's worth trying, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So you can look at it from the machine learning standpoint, or you can look at it in terms of like, I'm going to try to extract information that I care about
yeah.
from the text,
Yes.
maybe use regular expressions or something like that. um, but yeah, it would be foolish to overlook kind of this new rich information source for sure.
Got it. And considering the influx of Gen AI coming in, uh, I think the use case of storing your unstructured data as vector embeddings has becoming is becoming an important one. It's that earlier unstructured data we were just keeping it. I mean, not processing much, but now you can process it and save them as vector embeddings, and then you can use them for several use cases, like for example, collaborative filtering, recommendations, semantic
Mm-hmm.
search, right? So those are again some of these use cases where I feel that Gen AI could bring a next set of value add. What do you think about it, Nick? In quick 2 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think in some industries more than others, will definitely benefit from it. Um, but yeah, if you think about large language models as kind of a compression method almost, like, yeah, they make these nice like chat apps and everything,
Yeah, yeah,
but really what's happening is a whole lot of information is being compressed into relatively few parameters
yeah,
compared to the amount of information.
yeah,
um, so yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you can get similarity between various types of documents, and that can help you with, like you said, a recommendation engine. I think that's very exciting, and I think we're going to see more and more potential applications come from this that are not chat related, right? Because
mm,
the obvious thing is like, oh, well, let's try to build a chat bot,
yeah,
and that's fine, but like, is a chat bot on your website really going to help you? Maybe, but
yeah, yeah.
for many of our employers, a chat bot on the website is not going to move the needle on anything, right? I mean, we just have to be honest with ourselves whether that's
So that's
really
that's bang on,
helpful or not.
because that's what is generally the perception is that Gen AI means it can generate, it means the chatbot. I mean,
Right.
uh, uh, I can blame it to ChatGPT because the moment you say Gen AI, everybody thinks about ChatGPT, but it's not the case. The technology is fundamental, and I believe that there are lots of things at its core level, at transformers level, it can do a lot of tasks which most of the people they think that okay, it's only end of in the end it's a chatbot. So just
Right.
like any other technology which has been used in the past, even this technology I believe would be right now it is a lot of solutions looking for problems, but I believe that as problem space evolves more, there would be a right fitment of this technology also in industry workflows. And same
Yeah.
I hope for the auto insurance industry also, Nick. So
Yeah.
thanks Nick for finding time and connecting with me on this short conversation about this industry. You are leaving with me with a lot of questions and a lot of things to explore, which makes me very much excited. But would really like to be in touch with you and discuss more into some of these niche workflows and try to understand more from your industry experience. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. It's been fun, Amit, and great catching up with you.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.